All right. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Welcome back. I was just giving you guys a couple minutes to arrive to make sure you weren't late. Just kidding. It's so dang early. I was thinking about this morning, sort of like how, because we're learning today about karma. And it's always like there's always, I don't know, not always, but like when things happen and things get in the way, how do we navigate them? Right. And that's kind of where we are right now. It's we're finishing up ACI 16. Congratulations. That's a huge feat in and of itself. Just having a moment to like rejoice and say, "Hey, wow, we've done it." We're like, this is not, don't think what you're doing is not important or thinking that, oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, you're getting up early on a Sunday morning, Tim, those of you on the West Coast, you know, or that, it's late where you are. It's like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just getting up at 4:45 on a Sunday morning, right? When I could be sleeping in or, taking the time off your weekend, or all the work that you're doing, which I've been following what you're doing in the chats, the study groups. Not to think about it as like, oh, just one more thing that you're doing. It's like, oh, I have to go ahead and do this. Like, oh, I have to be here for ACI 16 or no big deal. You know, it's actually a quite a big deal, and why was I late this morning? Okay, why am I barely awake? I went to bed on time, you know, and then in the middle of the night, my fire smoke detector went off. Yeah, there's no smoke in the house, right? I guess it decided it was going to run out of batteries. So it went off, woke me up. I was like, that's weird. And then it did the chirping thing, right? Every 30 seconds, it goes, hey, I'm out of batteries. Hey, I'm out of batteries. I'm like, okay, fine. All right, whatever. Let's get out of a deep sleep, wake up. And no, it wasn't the one that you can get from, just stand on a chair. It's the one on the cathedral ceiling, that, the 12-foot ceiling. So there's no furniture that I can move. So I have to get out of bed. I have to put on my clothes. I have to go outside. I have to get the ladder, you know, halfway across the property, so yeah. So, so I'm changing this thing and then it's stuck because whomever put it up before I moved in here painted. And so it was painted into the ceiling. So here I'm on like a 10-foot ladder trying to get this stupid damn thing off, right? And it's chirping at me. It's 1 in the morning, right? So then I have to go get the tools, but the tools weren't nearby, blah, 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 right? Eventually, I hit the thing and I get it off and make a mess. And I'm like, all right, I'll clean that up tomorrow. And, by that point, you're wide awake, right? You know, I'm like, I don't have children. I don't know how the hell you all do it. You know, I don't know how you did it. It's different with when they're living beings, I guess. But, and I'm like, why do I was kind of frustrated, honestly. But then I was like, well, Tim, you are teaching ACI 5 tomorrow morning. You know, maybe you should ask a different question. You know, maybe you should ask the question of like, well, what caused this? Right? What caused the the thing that's supposed to keep me alive in case of a fire to malfunction? Or why did the battery, but why does the battery always die in the middle of the night with a smoke detector? Why doesn't it die at 10 a.m.? Why doesn't it start chirping at, 3 p.m. or at dinner time? Oh, well, in a normal time. No, it always, I don't know, it always seems to run out of batteries in the middle of the night. Okay. You know, so to get annoyed at the thing that's trying to keep you alive. Okay. Okay. So like, so I'm just laying there, I'm trying to get my body to get back to like sleep mode. And I'm like, wow, I'm annoyed at the thing that's designed to keep me alive. Then why does it interrupt me at the most inopportune time? All right. So, you know, then you start going through all these kinds of questions. Like, why? Like, why me? Why me? Why this? Why that? Thank you for turning on your cameras. It's beautiful to see your faces. And so when you think about why you're here, okay, like what are you doing? It's not just some random thing that's happening to you right now. You know, And hopefully I see Emily Chen here. She's a fellow 5 a.m. person right now in Sedona, right? Like, why are you spending your afternoon, your Sunday afternoon or your Sunday evening, right? Like why? Like why? Well, what made you choose? What made you choose? That's an interesting question. Ask yourself right now. What made me choose to be here right now? Like why? Like why are you wasting your time? Hopefully not. Okay. Okay, interesting interesting like, why do I have to see more comedy than serious answers in the chat? Well, probably because I have a karma for that. You know, but seriously, right? Like, Tyler, I hardly think you have nothing better to do, right? But so like when you ask that question, why are you here? You could say, well, you know, oh, well, because, it's the cool thing to do. Or, oh, because I need a certificate. Or, oh, well, because Tim, you said I wanted to be part of the Diamond Way courses, then you have to finish these courses, right? Okay, I said all those things, but you don't have to be here to be part of the Diamond Way course. All you need to do is go to 4 or 5 Bridge the Diamond Way courses, hang out with us there, and then you'll get some Diamond Way from Geshe Michael. Okay, great. Yeah. Sorry, lied to you, you know, or did I? You know, but something brought you here, you know, and there's some reason why you're here. And you could wake up in the morning and you can go like, well, I put it in my calendar. ACI sent me an invite. It sounded pretty cool. That Tim guy is not so bad. No, don't hate him that much. He's kind of entertaining sometimes, I guess. You know, maybe, maybe what I listen to helps me, you know. Well, I did all those other courses, so, I guess I should just keep going, and so you think about it long enough and it makes no sense. If you really think about what brought you to this moment, you probably will arrive at some kind of absurdity in your actions or in your thoughts, right? That you're going to be like, well, I don't know. I had a I had a birthday dinner last night. No, it wasn't my birthday. My friends took me out for my birthday 4 months after my birthday, which was lovely. And I said, we should do this more often. Um, and we were, I've known many of you know Anatole and Aisha, and I've known them since I met Geshe Michael. Anatole was at the first event that I went to in May of 2010. I met Aisha in November of 2010. We were just sharing stories, and they have a kid now. They weren't even together back then. They were in my house when they found out they were pregnant, right? They were sitting around they were like huddled around in their guest room on the floor, like over each other. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And I'm looking over them, and then I see the little thingy, like I don't know, the pregnancy test thingy. I don't know, the lines on it, right? I was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. They were like, we know, oh my God. Right? So you watch people's lives evolve, and we've become really close friends. We were talking, and we were telling stories about all the different things that have happened, and how life has changed, like who's still around, like the people that were there in 2010, who's still there, like who's still like active in the community, who's still alive, right? Who's shifted their life, you know who's some of the people who have shifted their life, they're not working for the worldview organizations anymore. They're very awesome practitioners. There's some people who shifted their life who aren't practitioners anymore. Um, there's some people who are practitioners who haven't changed their life. Like there's all these combinations of people. And that they were like, they asked me like, well, how did you go to the first DCI event? How did you go to the first ACI event? The first steps on the path, well, the gift of liberation teachings. And I was like, well, I got a book. Someone gave me a book. I was doing, I was studying Reiki. I was actually a teacher. And part of the teacher training was had to read books. Like there was a book list, and you know, the book, The Diamond Cutter, the Buddha on Managing Your Business appeared on that list. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I read the book, right? Well, how did that book get is that how I met Geshe Michael? Because somebody put it on a book list, right? There were 30 books on that list. I had to choose two, and I had to do one of those. I had to write a book report. Here I am, 25 years old, graduated. I have a master's degree, right? And I'm having to write book reports, which were great, right? So I'm like, all right, that looks like a nice book. Of the 30, I chose that book. Okay. Well, what if I had chosen a different book? Would I be sitting here right now? Would you be sitting here right now? That like I don't know what kind of child you were, but I always ask these kinds of questions. Like, if I go left versus right, how will that change my life? And once I go left, I can't go right again. The parallel multiverse universe of every single choice I've made, those universes do not exist anymore. This is my 8-year-old mind. This is why I had insomnia when I was a kid, because I couldn't handle the choices. Okay. But if I kept moving, always chose left over right, or I went this way or that way, that universe wasn't possible anymore. Or was it? These are the questions that we start getting to. Like why are you here? And why are you where you are right now? You know, actually the way that I met Geshe Michael is I was walking down the street of Philadelphia. I know exactly where I was. I was on Spruce Street around 12th Street and Spruce, if anyone's ever lived in Philly. It doesn't matter to you guys. I'm walking down the street and then a voice appeared in my head and said, "You go meet Geshe Michael." It was like a voice from God, if God exists, something like God exists. Okay. Well, why did that voice appear in my head? And then why did I listen to it? Like how many other random weird things come across your mind that you don't ever do? I mean, if I did all the weird things that came to my mind, you don't want to live in my mind. And I'm sure you would probably say the same thing about everybody else. You don't want to live in there. Like, what happens in there? Right? We can tell the stories. This is the point. You can tell the story. Like, well, how did you get here? Well, I was taking a Reiki teacher training. Okay. And then that book appeared. And then I put the book in my backpack and I read it for years. And then I heard a voice in my head. And then I answered the call and I went online. And then I drove to Detroit and there was a DCI class. Sorry, translators. Right. And then I met someone at that event who then sent me to a different event. And then I met my teachers there. And then I did a yoga teacher training. And then they whispered Lam Rim in my ears. Right. I can tell you that beautiful story. And maybe we should record it sometime. It's fun. Okay, well then why were you in the Reiki teacher training? Oh, well, because I met a guy on an airplane when I was 20 years old, flying to South America on a study abroad. And I became friends with them in the airport, in the airplane. Well, why did you become friends with the airplane? Well, they sat down next to me in Newark Airport. Okay. Well, they sat down next to you. Well, why did you talk to them? Well, I talked to them because couldn't understand. I was afraid to fly for the first time by myself, and I didn't understand the announcement. Okay, so you asked for help. So you asked for help, yeah. So, well, why were you sitting there, Tim? Well, because those are the flights my parents picked for me. Like, well, why were you doing that? Why did you go to Chile? Why? Like a whole series of choices and stories evolve into why you are the way you are. So you think, right? And that becomes I like that, Evgeny. It becomes your true story, right? But then you start asking questions. Well, the narrative is true to the extent that like this is what caused this and that's what caused that. But if you take a while to think about it, like it just feels a little bit too random. Like, why did I have the good fortune of sitting next to someone in Newark Airport who was Chilean, who was on vacation, who introduced me to his teacher? Like, I was meeting spiritual teachers when I was 20 years old and was like, oh, no big deal. Right. And who was that person? This is the diamond way question. Who was Elias Perez Ibarra? Who was he? Who was Elias? Elias just got married last month. I wasn't able to go to the wedding, right? But he just got married, right? Beautiful partner. They went to Brazil for their honeymoon. Like awesome. But why? Who is Elias, right? Was he just some random person that sat down next to me in the airport? You know, that's a Diamond Way question. Okay. That becomes a very different kind of question. You know, my life went left versus right in that moment. Like I got to Chile, and then they asked me, "Hey, well, we can drive you. Where are you staying?" And I told them I was staying in some hostel somewhere for a couple weeks. And they're like, "Oh, we'll drive you there." I'm like, "Okay." Why did I trust them? Who goes to a foreign country and trusts some random people, right? To then drive you somewhere? Like, my God, doesn't your mom say, don't get in cars with strangers? Like, don't get in a car with a stranger. You'll never be seen again. But I trusted them. And then I became friends with the family. They became really wonderful people. Like Elias's sister lives up in Montana now. She's married to a really awesome American guy. And it's beautiful, right? So, but who was he? And that's the Diamond Way question. Like, was he just some random dude who changed my life randomly? Right? Or was it a huge I'm going to send him this class. Or was it some like huge plan, right? To be like, well, let's kind of push Tim in a different direction, see where it goes, you know. And I'm sure each and every one of you, if you took some time to meditate regularly, I'm going to be irritated about it. Regular meditation, doing regular retreat, where you can think about these things and go and be like, well, why did this happen? Why did that happen? So, and that's what we're studying right now. We're studying how cause and effect really works, not what looks like cause and effect, right? And I want to pause for a moment for us to like also acknowledge that there is a kind of apparent cause and effect that's in play all the time, right? You know, the fire alarm goes off, it wakes you up, right? It looks like the noise sounds like it wakes you up. But have you ever slept through a thunderstorm where everyone goes, "Oh my God, last night it was so crazy. That storm was, you know," and you go, "What? I didn't hear anything." Right? "Oh, were you drunk last night?" "No." "Did you take sleeping pills?" "No." You know, how could you have missed that? Okay. So we think the fire alarm wakes us up. But given what looks like equal circumstances, you can sleep through a thunderstorm. Okay. So do loud noises always wake you up? No, they don't. So what was the cause to wake you up? And when you ask those weird questions, then you start thinking, well, shit, maybe, oh, I'm not allowed to swear anymore. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not allowed to, and I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm sorry. You know, you're like, dang, like what woke me up? Like, what was the actual cause of that? Um, and so then and then when you really ask the why question, you actually come to a place where you can't find the cause. Even though cause and effect works perfectly, you can't find the cause, And so that's what we're going to study, but where did it go? Where did it come from? Right? All of those questions are real, and when you get to a place where there's just like something doesn't make sense, then we get then we get into juicy territory. Like that's when we get into a place where like, ooh, like something else must be going on. But what is that? And that's what that and so where we are in the course, like when we're looking at the larger flow, right? We started with ACI 1, which was a overview, the entire path, right? Like here's a description of the entire path. Here's where it goes. And then we get into what we call Buddhist refuge. Okay, then we kind of hit you over the head a little bit with emptiness, like a lot of emptiness. But it's really this idea of like right away we're talking about what Buddhist refuge is and what it's not. It's not there's not this Buddha who sits as a statue, in a temple. That's not what it's like. There's not like this one Buddha who's like this one God, right? That we're looking at. We're understanding that what we're going for refuge in is our own personal transformation, the possibility that each and every one of us has within us, the emptiness that each of us has. And then we move into ACI 3 and we're like, okay, well, geez. That's a great picture. Thank you. Um, but you should be paying attention to class. Make fun photos later. Um, somebody save that and send it to me later. Anastasia. So then how do we get there? Then we have to start looking at our mind. We have to start looking, how do we even think about utilizing emptiness? Like how do we even think about this possibility of transformation? Well, you got to get your mind in a condition where you can look at it, right? You got to slow that monster down. You got to gain some facility with it and some control with it, right? The facility to be able to be woken up in the middle of the night by some major irritation and then go back to sleep, right? Like to be able to shift very quickly. Yeah, it took me 20 minutes to solve the problem, right? But I was back to sleep in 10 minutes. Calm my body down, reset, change the mind, change the structure, change the emotion, doop, and went back to sleep, right? And that comes from meditation, right? But was that the cause to be able to go back to sleep? because my meditation is consistent relatively. And this is where we have to like be very careful about what we claim. Okay, well then if everyone who meditates can then reset their mind, that meditation was the cause. Well, no. How many people meditate and couldn't go back to sleep? Right? Exactly. Julia said it perfectly. It's the condition. It's a condition for certain seeds to ripen in, but you have to have the seeds in the first place for the seeds to ripen. I'm not sure why everyone's thinking I'm so serious. Again, karma, I suppose. So apparently a meditation helps, and it does. Okay. So then we moved into a question in the ACI 4, we moved into the question of logic, right? Thinking, like how do we start clearing our mind up so we're thinking clearly, right? It's not just about, okay, I can meditate, but then how do you meditate clearly? How does your mind operate? Can you be a clear thinker? Can you stop a negative emotion from arising while you're in the middle of it? While you're standing on a ladder, realizing that some jerk painted the fire alarm to the ceiling on a 12-foot ceiling. It's 3 meters, almost 4 meters, so 3 meters. What idiot in the world does that? It was probably some asshole who's like, he, in 3 years, someone's going to be woken up in the middle of the night because that's the only time that those batteries die. And they're going to have to change it. Like, that's going to be fun. Right? Or, right? Or your mind goes to a different place and it goes, okay, well, when have I been a mindless idiot? When I wasn't mindful enough to take care of somebody else? When was I not taking care of future people? Right? I'm the person who like I'll go to a public bathroom and I'll clean up the public bathroom for other people, even though I'm not the one who made the mess. Right? Like, you know, for those of us who have the ability to pee standing up, okay, there's a risk. There's a margin of error, right? And you dribble in places. Like, you know, for those of you that don't know, sorry, I can't describe it to you, but those of you who do know, it goes all over the place sometimes and you can't control it, right? That's why monks are supposed to sit down. Monks are supposed to sit down when they pee, probably because you get more control of where it goes, right? But I always look for additional drops. I look like, oh, did I make a mess? Oops, I dribbled there. Ha ha ha, right? So I clean it up, right? You know, especially in a public restroom at Peach Street Cafe. Like the next person who comes in, they're gonna sit the next if a woman sits down or someone else sits down to go to the bathroom, they're gonna be sitting like that's disgusting, right? Or they clean it up, then they have to clean it up. They have to waste their time to clean it up, right? You know? So it's like, what if someone is having an emergency, like and has to go immediately? They're going to make a choice between cleaning up someone else's dribble or just being like, fuck it and sit down, right? And not worry about it. I wonder what translators say when I actually say these things. We should timestamp them and see if they actually say exactly what I say or if they color it. Yes, I know that, Sandra, I know that women don't sit down in many cases, right? You know, like, no, clean up the bathroom. Like, because it is the worst thing to have to go to the bathroom and you walk in and, it's the worst thing. Like, you don't have a choice. Your body's doing body things. Like, okay, well then why do you have to see a dirty bathroom? Hmm? You know, clean up afterwards. Take a little bit of extra time, you know. But so, but to be able to have that clear thinking, you have to have a meditative state of mind, right? To be able to sit there and be like, okay, it's not some jerk who painted this thing to the ceiling. It's my karma. Like an effect of some kind of cause that I put into play before. And then it just stops the emotion, you know. Then because if I got mad, what purpose is it gonna serve to be mad? Right? I really wish for those who are gonna watch this video in the future, the thing like this chat is probably by far the most engaging and hilarious chat I've had in a long time. Okay. So thank you. But for those of you who watch this on recording, I'm sorry you're not being able to see the chat. Um, so that's why we study karma now, because now, like, if we have the tools to slow our mind down, right? And then we have, our mind is being more clear. We're able to think more clearly. Okay. Now, what are we going to think about? Like, how are we're going to answer some of these questions? These questions you ask when you're a kid, like, well, why, mommy? And eventually, mom says, shut up. It's just the way the world is, right? Versus, like, okay, well, why did I have to wake up like this? Like, why am I worried about as an 8-year-old whether I make a choice to turn left or right? And if I don't go right, that entire universe that could have happened if I turn right is no longer possible. It should bother you. Maybe. So that's why we're studying this. And then what we're going to study next course, when we start ACI 17 is now we're really going to go heavy into emptiness. We're going to go heavy into that. So let's start reviewing here. All right, here we go. Let's get the right stuff up here. And by the way, before I we go here, I want to celebrate that, like watching all of you can study these courses, doing all the reviews, you know, all the study groups that are happening. I think it's amazing. Like, it's incredible. This, karmically, this was designed on purpose and for so many different ways, and people are teaching, right? And people who aren't teachers um, are learning how to teach. And, and I'm seeing people like someone told me the other day that they think they met their teacher because their study group teacher is so awesome. And I'm like, that's so fucking amazing, right? They're like, I finally met someone that like really resonates with me. And I'm like, that's great. And I felt at the time, I felt like, they were a little shy to tell me because they've been coming to a lot of my classes. And I was like, no, that's amazing. Like, no, great. That's the point. Okay. Meet the people that help you, right? The people that resonate with your heart and soul, who can like open it up and help you become a better person. Like to me, like that one sentence was so, God, I wish you guys could see this. Let's see. Maybe you can. Hold on. Now we're going to celebrate in a second. We're going to do two celebrations. The first celebration is just that, right? That like, people are helping each other and supporting each other. And that's what's supposed to happen, right? Like we develop these relationships across cultures and across time zones and across languages. Um, that's the whole like that's the whole point, that we're connecting with each other, and creating different causes to come together. Okay. That's the first major celebration, right? The other thing is I want to show you what I'm looking at right now. So we're gonna go on a field trip, okay? And there's a reason for this. There's always a reason for things. So hold on, we're gonna go out here. Let's see here. Let me see if I can see what I'm doing. All right. Okay, we're gonna go outside. Yeah. See if you can see it pretty well. Yeah. I'll go that way. That's what I want to see. Yeah. So that's the sun coming up over there, right? At 6:15 a.m. Right. You know, why do we get to see that right now? Ask yourself that question, you know. Then here's the rest of Rimrock if anyone cares to see. And in just that moment, um, I don't know if you could hear because the microphone might be off, but my friendly peacock has taken up residence down at the river below. And as I said, the rest of Rimrock was like made his little screaming noise because peacocks are the most eloquent of birds. If you've ever been around a peacock farm, you heard it? Good. Oh, Emily heard it because she's right down there. You know, so that's the question, right? Why do you get to see and hear certain things, whether good or bad? By the way, we're just gonna take a picture of this. So, all right, let's go into this. Right. So, what are we studying in this course? In this course comes from the Abhidharma Kosha, which is technically the first school. All right. And what we're doing is we're actually pulling the understanding of karma is presented in the first school. All right. So it's interesting that, if you've been around long enough, well, the first school wasn't accurate entirely. Let's just call it that way. When it refers to emptiness, it's not so accurate. Um, we'll talk a little bit more about that, right? But it's the Abhidharma Kosha is the treasure house of knowledge. Okay, so I just have this picture here, you know, and I think it's a really cool way to think about understanding karma, is like we're opening up we're opening up a treasure that we didn't even know was there, right? We're opening up something that if we actually appreciate and understand the jewels that are in it, has the ability to transform so much. And for me, the world that we're living in right now, it's a little frustrating, especially when I'm like, oh, I've been practicing all of these things for so many years, and it seems like in so many places that the opposite results are happening. And it's a thing where the more you think about it, the more you'll understand that where it's coming from and why you have a different opportunity in that moment. And it becomes less depressing and more motivating. And that's something it comes with time and practice. So the treasure house of knowledge, the Abhidharma Kosha, right? And the name of that, Chinumpasa. All right. Oh, I like your picture a lot better, Evgeny. Maybe I'll steal it from my PowerPoint. Evgeny, can you download all the photos that people put into the chat just so we can keep them later? Do it at the break. Um, so in Tibetan, it's Chinumpasa. Okay. And we in the when you're studying this, everyone just shortens it to "su," like, "Oh, what are you studying?" "Su," right? The treasure, right? The place where things are stored, and everyone knows what you're talking about. All right, and this was written by Master Vasubandhu. If you didn't know that yet, just go back, and that's his name in Tibetan. Lopan Yiknen. Lopan Yiknen. Excuse me. And I didn't write it all out in Tibetan. You can study that when you're study groups. And then the commentary we're studying, because as many of you already know, these texts from thousands of years ago are very difficult to understand. They're written in code. They're written in a way that requires an explanation from a teacher, and they're also written in ancient language. Every one of our languages from 1,000 years ago are nearly impossible to understand because languages evolve. Like if you took someone from 1,000 years ago speaking English and brought them to this class, they would have no idea what the hell we're talking about. Try to read ancient Chinese. Like without training, you're like, what does the hell? I mean, like I can see the character, but I have no idea what it means. Like it's same thing, right? The languages evolve over time, and you have to be trained on what that means. And so commentaries help us understand that. I have no idea what you just said, Tyler, so thank you. I'll see you in a week, Tyler. I hope so. Um, but the commentary we're studying is the Sutika Tarlam Sanje, which is which is the illumination of the path to freedom. Okay. Tarlam is the path to freedom. Cell is like putting light on things, illuminating, right? Su is again the Abhidharma Kosha, and Tika is the Sanskrit word for commentary. And this is by the first Dalai Lama. Okay. And so when we say Abhidharma, what do we mean by that? Like what are we Abhidharmaing? Like what does this word mean? Chudnumpa. Okay. And what it means for as face value, like what does it mean? Like just the word Abhidharma, it just means knowledge. Okay. But our question is like what kind of knowledge? Like and that's what is happening in this course. What kind of we're getting there? What is the highest knowledge, right? Exactly what Janet said, or Jane said, I'm sorry. So abi means higher, up to, approaching, right? So this is why we have this picture of the balloon to remember that we're not just looking at for knowledge of all knowledge. We're not looking at certain kind of knowledge. We're not saying, oh, well, how do you be the best psychiatrist or how do you be the best chemist? Like all of those things are important kinds of knowledges, you know, but we're looking at a particular kind of knowledge. Okay. And we're trying to understand Dharma, like Abhidharma. Like, what does it mean to understand the highest of all existing objects? Like a Dharma is just a thing, right? It's just a thing. But we're looking for the highest things, like the things that are going to help us the most, right? And the word Dharma comes from a Sanskrit root dur, which means to hold, like something that holds on to something, right? And in this case, a dharma is something that holds on to its nature, its own nature, right? A thing, right? So what we're trying to understand is how do we hold on to things? Like when something's an existing object, how do we hold on to it? What makes it something that exists for us? That's the question. Like, how does something exist? And if we investigate certain kinds of objects, certain kinds of existence, what what will understanding those kinds of objects do for us? Okay. We can like take all existing things. Okay, let's start there. All existing things. That's a lot of stuff. Okay. Which ones of those things are going to help you? Like if you're going into a meditation retreat, Olga, right? Like what kinds of things are you going to think about and investigate in a meditation retreat that's going to help you shift things, change things, understand things? Like, don't go into a meditation retreat. Don't be like Tim, everybody, and then spend 2 weeks thinking about what somebody did to you 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. Is that a worthwhile existing object? In fact, it's so existing, it doesn't even exist anymore because it happened 2 years ago. But we do those things, right? And so part of the study of Abhidharma is to help us orient our mind towards existing things that are going to help us versus existing things that aren't going to help us that much. Okay. And so we have to figure out which things and why do we need to figure it out? Why can't we just study all existing things? Well, fine, go study all existing things, but you'll die before you get to a place where you actually have studied all existing things, and then you'll just have to do it again. You don't have enough time. There's not enough time to study all existing things. As a set of things, take all existing things, sure. You can study those things as a set, but what kinds of things do we want to focus on? What kinds of questions do we want to focus on? I had, and I'll tell you right, like I was able to kind of pause it for a second, but like looking out the window, the reason I wanted to share it was, like a couple weeks ago, one of my cats passed, right? And she used to sit there watching the sunrise, listening to class, right? She would sit there, and so it was this thing where I was like, shit, this is why we're here. Like, that's let's talk about the existing object of death. which is something that each and every one of us is going to have to focus on, you know? And so, like, let's take death, right? Let's take that as an object. Let's take that as something that's very real. What are you going to spend your life thinking about, right? Like, that's a real question. It's a real thing. Like, and if you recognize that each and every one of us is going to face that soon, much sooner than you think, you know, then what are you going to focus on to be able to maybe possibly change that? Okay. Because if you're sitting around in your meditation retreat thinking about something that happened 2 years ago or 10 years ago, which you all will do, it'll come up in retreat, I promise. Is that going to help you make any significant changes in your life? Other than thinking about, okay, why do I keep seeing these same patterns over and over again? That's a useful question. Rather than, rather than focusing on, I can't believe they said that to me. I can't believe they treat me like that. I had that conversation with my friends last night. I can't believe these people. They're always treating me like this. And my friends are like, and I'm like, yes, I know. I know it's coming from me, but I'm still complaining about it. Yeah. I love when people start the sentence, it's coming from me, but I'm still going to complain about it. I know it's coming from me, but let me complain about it. My friends are gorgeous. They're just like, there's like 10 blessings in that. I was like, please tell me the blessings. You know, I know it's coming from me, but that's my the favorite line. So what are the useful things to think about? Like freedom, like freedom from pain, freedom from the cycle of life, nirvana, you know, knowing all existing things, being able to do all of that. Like, how do we okay, here's the next question, everybody. This is why we have to do logic. Well, how do we establish that something like nirvana even exists, where you no longer have mental afflictions? You wake up in the middle of the night because the fire alarm's going off, and you're like, oh, okay, guess I'll deal with this right now at 1 a.m. Okay, that's nice. And then you just go back to bed and you're like, yeah, that was nice. You don't get bothered. Like an arhat doesn't not have things happen if you still have a body, you know, but you're unaffected. God dang, that would be awesome. Wouldn't it be awesome to just not be affected by things? But it doesn't mean you don't do something. That's the most important point. An arhat still does things. Just because you don't have an emotional reaction or a negative reaction to something doesn't mean you don't help other people. It's actually the opposite because you understand. You understand a lot. You understand how deep it can be. Okay. And you know what makes me really happy is that as I was reviewing Geshe-la's classes earlier this week for these two classes, he was like, yeah, we're not going to get through all the content. You can just do it in your study groups. I was like, yes. Gave us permission. If I don't get through it, you can just do it in your study groups. So, but I'm going to try to get through everything I plan to get through. So, when we're talking about like the different types of knowledges and what like we have to be able to establish, well, what object is what we're looking at, and does it even exist? Because just because we can imagine it doesn't necessarily mean it exists as a thing, right? So we have to be able to establish what it is. So, an Abhidharma, what we're talking about really are the five different paths, which I know you've heard about, but it's useful to go over again. So there's five different paths in a journey, five different steps that you take, massive steps. And there's steps between the steps, but here's the chunks of them that you take in your spiritual evolution. Everyone goes through these kinds of stages, right? So the first stage is the path of accumulation, soklam, where you're accumulating good karma, right? You have a sense of renunciation and it grows and wanes and things like that. Death is a great time to get renunciation. I like to sometimes call it sugarcane renunciation because then, a week later you go back to your life and you forget that your cat died, right? Hopefully you don't. But, you know, there's real renunciation and then there's like you have pockets of renunciation. And I like to take those pockets of renunciation and just drive them as deep as I can. Like, don't forget, don't forget, you know. And so you're accumulating good karma, right? And then what happens is at some point you accumulate enough good karma, which creates, I like to call it kind of creates a rift in reality. No, come back here. Right. So after you accumulate enough karma, you get this thing called the path of preparation, jwalam. And and it's kind of like a rift in reality, what I said. Like it's a rift in, like the fabric of reality rips a little bit. And somehow, some way, you have an insight and someone teaches you something and they teach you that things aren't what they are. Like, where's my pen? If I had a pen close, the pen, right? Is it a pen or a chew toy, right? Someone teaches you the pen. You have some kind of insight into things aren't the things that I thought that they were because they could be something else to somebody else. And that only comes from good karma. And you have to think about that for quite a while. Like, why generally, I'm going to say generally, it takes a whole lot of good karma to be able to have someone even talk to you about the idea that a pen could be a chew toy, and validly so. You know, why do like think about the people who are the most angry. Think about the people who are the most unkind. They're not they gotta be careful what I say. People who start wars with other people aren't thinking about emptiness. I promise you. They're not thinking about cause and effect either, in the real sense. They can't handle the pen. That's great. Like for that movie, you can't handle the truth. They can't handle the pen because if they actually thought about it and had to think about it, most of their actions would change. When you get taught the pen, something shifts in your reality where even if it's just a little break, like like this shirt this morning, not this one, but I had a different black shirt that some people would say it shrunk in the dryer. Other people would say, Tim, you expanded in size. I think the second one is more true. I expanded. I can't wear small t-shirts anymore. I'm not tiny anymore. Let me show you guys something. And I know it's kind of interesting here. You want to see how tiny I used to be? My mom sent, so my mom celebrates St. Patrick's Day, which was earlier this week, and she always sends me fun stuff, right? So she's friends with somebody who lives down the street, I don't know exactly where. And they have a book club. Okay. My mom's friend, her daughter went to the same high school that I went to, and she was a year older than I was. Okay. So kind of same years, right? So her mom gave my mom a picture of me from 1994, 93. Okay, you guys are ready? No screenshotting. If this appears on the internet, I'm gonna be really pissed off. Are you ready? Here's little Timmy. Okay, right? This is from a high school dance, I think. So the girl in the green, that was my date. Okay. And then her mom is friends with my mom now, right? So here I am. I'm 15 years old. Ta-da. Right? Okay. And I'm looking at myself in the suit and I'm like, oh my God, I bear like I'm if I turned sideways, I was probably invisible. But anyway, the whole point of that was my shirt got smaller or Tim got bigger, right? So I put on the shirt and I was like, well, maybe if Evgeny. So if I when I pulled that shirt, like I heard the seam of the shirt rip. Like I pulled it to stretch it out so it would fit, right? And when everyone knows the sound of ripping cloth, right? Like and I was like, oh shit. I was like, well, the shirt didn't fit anyway. Right. It does. The result's still the same. I can't wear the shirt. Hold on just one second. That's better. All right. So it's like that. As soon as you get taught the pen, the fabric of reality starts to shift. Like now it's not woven together in a way that goes, oh, the world is just this way. And you go, well, it doesn't have to be that way. And so then you slowly start, and this is what it's called Jorlam. You start preparing yourself for, well, what if everything is that way? Part of me wants to criticize my current political leadership enough that so they would watch this class and maybe they'll understand, right? Maybe if we criticize, then they watch it on YouTube and then get banned and all this other shit happens, right? Because all we're saying is like what you think you see doesn't have to be what you think you see. And the results of your actions may not be what you think the results will be. And what the results are probably going to be is more suffering. Like, I mean, all you need to do is say, like, you've created more suffering, buddy. Okay. What are you going to do about that? Well, what created that suffering? Right? So like, then you ask that real question. The reason you created that suffering is because you think a pen's a pen. That's all. it's so easy. It's so easy because it's been in our face the entire time and we haven't seen it. And even those of us who have been taught the pen, you know, it's so in our face all the time and we just don't see it. And then we have reactions. Then we get upset and then we do things to create more suffering, And so what we're trying to get at here is, you know, once you've understood the pen enough, you get to this place where you you see directly Tonglang, you see directly how the you that you think is you from its own side is not the you that you thought it was. You are empty of any self nature, and you perceive that directly. You know, and no amount of teachings can help you unless you understand that point. Accumulating teachings doesn't help you directly if you misunderstand the teachings. But I didn't say don't come to a lot of classes. Didn't say that. Okay. Just in case someone doesn't quote the executive director of ACI 5 houses, he said I don't have to come to class anymore. That's what we do all day long, not criticizing what we do. All right. It's how you take it. Okay. But when you see directly that things are coming from you, you are coming from you. You have no self nature. There's no you that's not coming from how you treated others in the past. Seeing that directly as an absence is what changes your capacity, right? And then the fourth path, um, Gomlam, jeez, sorry, the path of habituation. That's when you just get used to what you saw. And then you habituate yourself to be like, oh, everything. You know you're wrong. You can't stop seeing it incorrectly, but you know you're wrong. And then you're habituating yourself to what you saw. And then you get to the path of no more learning, which is essentially Buddhahood on the Bodhisattva track. So these three are actually higher knowledge. This is what Abhidharma is talking about. Okay. The unstained side of wisdom. Unstained wisdom, let's just call it that. All right. So for study groups, you're going to talk about what makes for a reputable book. Like, what are the four qualities of a book? Like the relationship of the subject matter, the purpose, and the ultimate goal. You can talk about that. If you don't memorize anything else, Tracy, besides the definition of bodhicitta, okay, memorize this line. Lele jikten nasoke. All right. The opening lines of the fourth chapter of the Abhidharma Kosha. Lele jikten nasoke. Karma comes, the multitude of worlds, all the worlds there are, arise out of karma, out of your deeds. And I just highlighted Lele because in Tibetan, unfortunately, one is a noun and one is a particle. Okay. So the first lay means karma or means deeds. The second lay means from in a way. So, and that's just something you have to learn. It just, every language has these kinds of things in it. It just happens in this case to put them together. Jikten is the world. Nasok is all of the worlds. K are born out of. Okay. So the worlds that there are coming from causes. They're coming from the things that you've done, right? So like you can think of the multitudes of worlds of like this planet and Sirius and all those other places, or you can think of, you know, the multitudes of reality in the room right now between a pen and a chew toy. Okay. We don't have to think about, oh, the other planets. No, you just think about a room. Think about the room. Just think about the room. Like how many worlds are happening, right? How many beings are in the room determine how many realities are happening. And they all come from their individual karma. All right. And then the second line of the Abhidharma, Deni Semba Dangde Che. And this is the definition of karma. The first one is the movement of the mind, Semba. Okay. So the mind, so as the most raw karma, the most foundational karma that you do is in your thoughts. And then what they motivate, Tang and Deche, what it motivates. Mainly your anything you do and anything you say. Okay, so karma is primarily in its rawest form the movement of mind, anything your mind moves to, and then whatever it motivates you to do with your face, with your mouth, and with your hands, right? The two most important lines, and it pretty much tells and it connects everything to dependent origination and emptiness, right? Both of those things are built into the Abhidharma Kosha in the opening lines. Lele, lele jikta nasoke deni semba dang de che. Okay. Cause and effect and emptiness are in both. The multitudes of world come from the way you see things, the way that, excuse me, the multitudes of worlds come from the things that you do, which implies that they have an emptiness because anything could be anything depending on the karma that you have. And it's a bold statement. And then we're going to move on and you can think about it later. So there's two kinds of, how do I say this? Form, right? And the way that I'd like to think about it is there's communicating and non-communicating. And I use this example pretty uncomfortably because it's actually kind of, anyway, I'll just tell you about it. So we have Geshe Michael here when he was a monk, dressed in robes, right? This was years and years ago, teaching the gift of liberation. He doesn't wear robes anymore, by the way. But this communicates something, right? It communicates that he has monk's vows, right? It shows something. He's wearing like if you see someone wearing those, wearing the the three main parts of an ordained person's clothing, you assume certain things about them. You assume a certain kind of virtue, whether they're virtuous or not is a different story. But you assume a certain thing about them, right? It's communicating, right? It communicates virtue. Okay. Now, there's a lot of people that pretend to be virtuous who aren't, that's a different story. right? But then you have non-communicating, right? Like that's just normal clothing, right? Jeans and a button-down shirt. So like does does he still have those does he still have that virtue just because he's not wearing the clothes? What do you think? Well, I mean, depending if you have the karma to see it that way, of course. But there's communicating form and non-communicating form, right? And there's times when, apparently they say when you take vows, in the Abhidharma, you get a kind of halo around you, like a protective halo. Um, when you create protection, like we create protection boundaries when we do a retreat, for example, right? You put up markers, right? You're basically saying, this is my boundary, right? You can put boundaries up on your body, for example, right? Communicating form or non-communicating form, things that you see, things that other people don't see, you know. But the idea is that you get this halo when you take vows in Abhidharma, which you actually don't. It's a, you know, but it's a very helpful thing, right? It communicates, like you get this like, okay, I have these vows, like I'm trying to be a better person. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about non-communicating form, you know, there's a whole bunch of different characteristics about that, and your study group leaders can discuss those things. And literally, we're not going to get through most of this class, so don't worry. Um, but the main point of all of these of this story is that where is it that like I'm not gonna go that far yet. If we're trying to find the causes, right, for the things that are going to create a better world, right? Because understanding emptiness is one half of the thing. The pen could be anything else. Like it could be a chew toy. But how do I make it into something that's going to be something pleasant versus something that's not pleasant? Right? Maybe a chew toy is pleasant for you. Okay. Maybe you enjoy a chew toy, right? I don't know. But I can tell you there's lots of things in the world that I don't like, including being woken up at 1 a.m. by a fire alarm because the battery ran out. Right. And that's just a minor inconvenience. Lots of things I don't like seriously don't like. The things that really, really hurt people. So we're trying to understand what are the things we're supposed to do to put the causes into place so that when they ripen, we like them, that we like the ripenings. And this is the definition of morality in Buddhism. And this is a hard thing to wrap our mind around. We'll pause right after this thought, and you can then meditate on it in the break. What makes something a good deed or makes something a bad deed? It's actually determined by the result that it gives you. Okay. What do you mean? Is that if it produces a result that is enjoyable, that you like, that doesn't hurt you, it's considered a good deed. if it produces a negative reaction and something that hurts you, then it's a negative deed. Okay. And that's a very subtle, it's a very subtle question. Like goodness and badness are determined by the results they produce. Okay. And so all of a sudden, you're what could be a good thing for one person is a bad thing for another person. It's a very, very subtle point, and you have to think about it and it opens up a whole level of discourse about how you treat other people. Because you might in the moment feel good when you yell at somebody. I finally told them the truth. Now they know exactly what I think about them. They're wrong and I'm right. And you might feel good in that moment. But how many times have you yelled at somebody and then didn't feel good about it afterwards? That's another possibility. So the yelling at the person and telling them what you really think was not the cause of how you felt about it afterwards. The separate seed. You just planted a seed for someone to yell at you when you're wrong in the future. But how you feel about it's a different seed. And and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not easy. Like Abhidharma is meant to be straightforward. This is why we get the 10 good deeds next. Oh, I don't know what to do. Okay, well, then let me give you the 10 good deeds because this is kind of a shaky point, right? And then we're going to take a break. And I have pictures for all of them. Da, 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 da. Here they are. No killing a human being. Right? That's literally what it means. It doesn't say can't kill cows, but it implies it. Okay. Not stealing something that wasn't given to you. Excuse me, not taking something that wasn't given to you. That's the definition of stealing. My Jin Len. All right. If it wasn't given to you, don't take it. Don't take that pencil from work unless your boss gives it to you. Respect other people's partnerships. Okay. This person's on Tinder. Okay. While they're in a committed monogamous relationship, you know, respect other people's relationships. Okay. Those are the deeds of your body. Don't lie. Here's Pinocchio, for those who know that story. Every time Pinocchio lies, his nose gets bigger. This is a perfect example that I wish karma would happen sometimes. When you did something, you actually saw the result right away, right? If you lied, every time you lied, your nose grew bigger, you'd stop lying. If every time you step on a bug or you killed the roaches in your house, your back would hurt right away. And, maybe you would stop doing it. But the problem is karma is there's a time gap. So then we forget, right? Next one is um, divisive speech. Don't say things about other people that separate them. And we'll talk about that in the next class. Like, this is a habit that a lot of us have. Like, we try to make teams. We try to think that I'm going to talk shit about this other person so that other people don't like them or because they hurt me or something like that. Like, we know what hurt you, your karma hurt you. You know what your karma was? You hurt other people in the past. You know, what if we all see the same jerk doing the same jerky things? Well, we have a nice shared karma. We all did that in the past and we're experiencing it all at the same time. Harsh words, don't use them. This little bear, for those who don't speak English, don't worry about it. Don't say harsh words. Like, be sweet and gentle with your words. I sometimes retract some of the things I say because in some ways I think they're funny, but in other ways I think they hurt people. And so if you want to hear sweet things in your life, don't use harsh words. Don't think harsh words. What if you're not thinking harshly, but you use a harsh word? Is it a harsh word? You can think about it. Don't just blah blah. You know what the best blah blah is? Scrolling Instagram, scrolling through WeChat. That's a bunch of blah blah. All right. These ones are in your thoughts. Having not being happy for other people's success. This person is upset because that those two people are having a partnership that looks happy and she's jealous. Instead of being happy that they're happy, she's jealous. Who had the karma to see them happy? You did. Why did you feel jealousy about it? Because you have the karma to be that way. So just be happy about other things you see because it's coming from you anyway. This is the most irritating one. I do this all the time. Don't be happy when other people have a bad day. Okay. This is the other thing we do. We're happy when other people suffer. And, that's a huge deed. The last thing is wrong worldview, meaning mainly you can sum it up as you see things this way when you should be seeing things this way. Okay. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 25 minutes or so. Come on back. We're going to talk. The first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to have a class in Thailand in a month, and I'm inviting all of you to come. So we're going to talk about that first thing after the break. Thank you all. Take a nice rest. Get some food, get some drinks, go to the bathroom, clean the bathroom afterwards, and I'll see you in a few minutes. All right? Okay. Thank you.